Ambassador Kethora stood at the viewing window of the starship Harmony's Voice, watching another dead world drift past. The planet below had once been home to millions of Corvani people. Now it was nothing but empty cities and broken dreams. The Void Swarm had been here 3 months ago. They always left the same thing behind, nothing. Cathar's blue skin grew darker with worry. Her people, the Zelani, were peaceful traders and diplomats. They had never been good at war. None of the races in the Galactic Confederation were. For 2,000 years, they had lived in peace, trading knowledge and building a better galaxy together. War was something from the old stories, something their grandparents might remember from history books. But the Void Swarm did not care about peace. They came from the dark spaces between galaxies, hungry and endless. They ate everything: planets, people, entire solar systems. They were like insects, but insects the size of battleships, controlled by a mind that spanned light years. The Confederation's peaceful ships were no match for them. "Any word from the Outer Rim?" Cathara asked her aide, a nervous young Zelani named Veltar. "3 more systems have gone quiet," Veltar replied, his voice shaking. "The hegemony lost contact with the Tau Ceti colonies yesterday. The military council thinks we have maybe 6 months before they reach the core worlds." 6 months. Cathara closed her eyes and tried not to think about her home planet with its crystal cities and floating gardens. The swarm would devour it all, just like they had devoured everything else. Unless the Confederation found allies. Real allies. Warriors who could fight back. What about the survey reports? She asked. Veltar pulled up a holographic display showing dozens of star systems. Red markers showed civilizations they had already contacted. Most were marked with symbols that meant too primitive or no military capability or refused alliance. "We've checked 47 systems in the Outer Rim," Veltar said. "The Krillians were promising, but their whole species are pacifists. The Thexani have good weapons, but there are only a few thousand of them left. The Mordic Empire has a strong military, but they're already fighting their own war with the Blight." Cathara nodded sadly. It was the same story everywhere. The galaxy was full of intelligent species, but most were like the Confederation, peaceful, civilized, unprepared for something like the Void Swarm. The few warrior races were either too small to help or had their own problems. "Wait," Veltar said, pointing at a display. "There's something here." System designation Sol 3. The computer flagged it as unusual. "Show me," Cathara said. The hologram shifted to show a small yellow star with several planets around it. One planet was marked in blue and green, signs of water and life. But as Cathara looked at the data, her hope began to fade. "This can't be right," she said. "Look at these readings." The planet's surface temperature swung between freezing cold and burning hot. Massive storms bigger than most moons raged across its surface. The atmosphere contained poisons that would kill most species in minutes. Radiation from the star was strong enough to burn through most types of skin. The gravity was almost twice what most Confederation species could handle. "And look at the life forms," Veltar added, pointing to scanner data. "The computer lists over 8 million different species. Most of them are predators. Some of them are huge. There's something here that weighs over 100 tons and eats other large animals." "This world is a death trap," Cathara said. "Nothing civilized could live here. Maybe some primitive survivors hiding in caves, but..." She stopped talking. The scanner was showing something impossible. Energy signatures that meant technology. Radio signals. And the population counter was climbing higher and higher. "How many people does it say live on this planet?" she asked. Veltar checked the display twice before answering. "Over 7 billion. And they're not hiding underground. They're everywhere, on every continent, even on floating cities in the middle of those poisonous oceans. Cathara stared at the readings. 7 billion people living on a world that should have killed them all. Not just surviving, but thriving. The scanner showed massive cities, flying vehicles, and what looked like primitive but functional spacecraft. Maybe the scanner is broken, Veltar suggested. Run it again, Cathara ordered. They ran the scan 3 more times. Each time, the results were the same. Billions of intelligent beings living on a planet that was trying to kill them every single day. The beings had not only survived, they had built a civilization that covered their entire world. What kind of species could live in a place like this? Veltar whispered. Cathara was thinking the same thing. If these beings could survive on this death world, they had to be incredibly tough. Maybe tough enough to fight the Void Swarm. Maybe tough enough to save the galaxy. Set course for their system, she ordered, and send a message to the High Council. Tell them we may have found something interesting. As the Harmony's voice turned toward the distant yellow star, Cathara wondered what they would find there. The scanner data made no sense. No civilized species should be able to live on such a horrible world. But the evidence was clear. Something had not only survived there, but had grown into a massive civilization. Whatever lived on that blue and green planet had been tested by their world every day of their existence. They had faced challenges that would destroy most species, and they had not just survived, they had won. If the Confederation could convince them to join the fight against the Void Swarm, maybe there was hope after all. The stars stretched into lines as the ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying its desperate crew toward a world none of them could imagine. To meet a species that would change everything they thought they knew about what it meant to be strong. The alarm started screaming as soon as the Harmony's voice entered the Sol system. Cathara rushed to the bridge to find her crew staring at the display screens in confusion. Report, she ordered. We're being scanned, said Commander Theklos, the ship's security officer. Multiple contacts, moving fast. Their technology is primitive but functional. They're demanding to know our intentions. On the main screen, several small spacecraft appeared. They looked rough and angular, nothing like the smooth curves of Confederation ships. But they moved with purpose, taking defensive positions around the alien vessel. Open communications, Cathara said. The screen flickered and showed a being unlike anything she had ever seen. It was tall and stood on 2 legs, with smooth skin instead of fur or scales. Its hair was dark and its eyes were a startling blue color. Most disturbing was its mouth. When it spoke, Cathara could see sharp white teeth. This is Captain Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Force, the being said. You are in human space without permission. State your business or prepare to be escorted out of the system. Human. So that was what they were called. I am Ambassador Cathara of the Galactic Confederation, she replied, trying to keep her voice calm. We come in peace, seeking diplomatic contact with your species. The human's expression changed. The corners of its mouth turned upward, which the computer said was called a smile. But on a being with sharp teeth, it looked more like a threat display. First contact, Captain Chun said. Well, that's not something you see every day. Follow my ships to the meeting station near Luna. That's our moon. Try anything funny, and we'll blow you out of space. Oh, and welcome to the neighborhood. 3 hours later, Cathara and her diplomatic team sat in a metal room on the human space station. The humans had been polite but firm. All weapons were to be left on the ship, and the meeting would be on human terms. The delegation from Earth was led by someone called Commander Chun and included scientists, diplomats, and soldiers. Cathara tried not to stare at them, but it was difficult. They were all predators. She could see it in the way they moved, the way their eyes tracked movement, the way they smiled to show their teeth. So, Commander Chun said, You're from a galactic government. How many species are we talking about here? The Confederation includes 47 different intelligent species, Cathara replied. We have lived in peace for over 2,000 years, sharing knowledge and resources. Sounds nice, Chun said. But I'm guessing you didn't come all this way just to say hello. What do you need? Cathara explained about the Void Swarm, about the destroyed worlds, and the desperate search for allies. As she spoke, she noticed the humans paying close attention. They asked good questions about tactics, weapons, and enemy capabilities. These Void Swarm creatures, said Dr. James Park, one of the human scientists. You say they're like insects but the size of battleships? Yes, Cathara said. They are controlled by a hive mind and show no fear of death. They destroyed our entire fleet at Proxima Base in less than an hour. Interesting, Dr. Park said, making notes. Hive minds usually have weaknesses. Take out the central control and the whole system collapses. Have you tried targeting their command structures? Cathara blinked in surprise. No. Our strategy has been focused on evacuation and defense. Of course it has, muttered one of the human soldiers, a scarred man called Sergeant Rodriguez. Peaceful species always think defensively. Commander Chun shot him a warning look, then turned back to Cathara. Tell me about your world, Ambassador. What's it like? Zeltos Prime is beautiful, Cathara said, grateful for the change of subject. Perfect climate, peaceful oceans, gentle rainfall. The temperature never goes below 20 degrees or above 30. We have no dangerous predators and no natural disasters. It's a paradise. The humans exchanged glances. Dr. Park cleared his throat. That sounds very safe. What do you do for excitement? Excitement? Cathara was confused. We enjoy music, art, philosophy. We trade with other worlds and learn about new cultures. No sports? Asked Sergeant Rodriguez. We have some games. Gentle competitions involving strategy and teamwork. No extreme weather? No dangerous animals? No challenges? Why would we want such things? Cathara asked. The humans looked at each other again. Commander Chun pulled out a small device and showed her moving pictures. Cathara watched in horror as humans threw themselves from flying vehicles with only thin fabric to slow their fall. Others raced vehicles at incredible speeds, just barely avoiding crashes. Some actually fought large predators with nothing but metal sticks. This is what humans do for fun, Chun explained. Cathara's aide Veltar made a choking sound. They do this voluntarily? For entertainment? Well, yeah, Rodriguez said. Life's boring without a little risk. Dr. Park showed them more images. Humans climbing frozen mountains in conditions that would kill most Confederation species. Humans swimming in oceans filled with massive predators. Humans running through burning buildings to save each other. Your world, Cathara said slowly. The scanner data said it was a death world. Extreme weather, dangerous animals, toxic plants, deadly radiation. Oh, that? Chun laughed. Yeah, Earth can be rough sometimes. We've got hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanoes, floods, droughts, blizzards, tornadoes, and about 1 million different ways to die. The wildlife alone. She shrugged. You learn to deal with it. Deal with it? Veltar squeaked. How do you deal with a planet trying to kill you? We fight back, Rodriguez said simply. Humans don't give up. Ever. Dr. Park pulled up statistics about Earth. In the last century alone, we've survived 2 global wars, multiple pandemics, natural disasters that destroyed entire cities, and about 50 different ways the world could have ended. We're still here, but why? Cathara asked. Why didn't you find a safer planet? The humans looked at her like she had asked why they breathed air. Because it's our planet, Chun said. And we don't run from fights. Commander Chun stood up and walked to the window. Outside, Kithosera could see Earth, the blue and green death world that had somehow produced these incredible beings. Ambassador, Chen said, you came here looking for allies to help you fight monsters. I think you found the right place. We've been fighting monsters our whole lives. The only difference is, now we get to fight them in space. She turned back with that sharp-toothed smile that Kethera was beginning to understand wasn't a threat display at all. It was a promise. When do we start? General Vorthek clicked his claws against the metal table as he studied the human soldiers. The Krillian military commander had fought in 3 wars and survived battles that had broken entire armies. He knew warriors when he saw them. These humans looked like warriors, but they were small and soft compared to most fighting species. Are you certain about this? He asked Kethara. We're about to test them on Korthax Prime. That planet kills trained soldiers. They insisted on the test, Kethara replied. They want to prove they can fight alongside Confederation forces. The human team stood at attention in the briefing room. 20 soldiers led by someone called Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez. They wore simple green uniforms and carried basic equipment. Nothing fancy, nothing that looked particularly advanced. Listen carefully, General Vorthek said, his translator making his words sound harsh and growling. Korthax Prime is a training world. High gravity, low oxygen, hostile wildlife. Our elite forces train there. Many don't survive. Are you sure you want to do this? Rodriguez stepped forward. He was shorter than most Confederation soldiers, but he moved with confidence. Sir, with respect, we didn't come here to hide behind others. If we're going to fight together, we need to prove we can keep up. Vorthek studied the human's face. No fear, just determination. Either very brave or very stupid. Very well. You have 1 week to complete the survival course. Teams of elite Confederation Marines take 2 weeks minimum. We'll be done in 3 days, Rodriguez said. Several alien officers laughed. Vorthek didn't. Something about these humans reminded him of stories his grandfather told about the old wars. About species that fought like demons and never gave up. Korthax Prime was everything General Vorthek had promised. The gravity was crushing, making every step an effort. The air was thin and tasted of metal. Strange howls echoed through the dark forests, and things with too many eyes watched from the shadows. The humans landed and immediately began setting up camp. Vorthek watched through satellite feeds as they worked. Other species would have spent hours complaining about the conditions. The humans just got to work. Temperature is dropping, reported Major Kells, Vorthek's aide. Down to -15 degrees. Most species would be seeking shelter. On the screen, the humans were stripping down and jumping into an ice-cold river. They were laughing. What are they doing? Kells asked. I have no idea. Vorthek muttered. By the second day, the humans had not only adapted to the planet's conditions, they were thriving. They used the planet's deadly plants as medicine. They tracked and hunted the dangerous predators for food. They turned caves full of poisonous gas into tactical advantages. Sir, reported Captain Nixani from the monitoring station. The human team just encountered a pack of razor-claw beasts. Those creatures have killed half our trainees this year. Vorthek watched the screen intently. The razor claws were massive predators with claws like swords and armor-plated hides. 6 of them surrounded the human team in a narrow canyon. Instead of running, the humans did something that made Vorthek's blood run cold. They split up and used the canyon walls to their advantage. 3 humans climbed straight up the rocky cliffs, moving like insects. The others spread out and made noise, drawing the beasts into attack positions. When the razor claws charged, the humans on the cliffs dropped rocks and crude spears onto them. The ones on the ground didn't retreat. They attacked with knives and tools. going for the creature's weak spots with surgical precision. Within minutes, all 6 beasts were dead. The humans were already butchering them for meat. How did they know where to strike? Kells whispered. They watched, Vorthik said. They learned. In minutes, they figured out what takes our soldiers weeks to understand. On the 3rd day, everything changed. Alarms began screaming throughout the monitoring station. A real Void Swarm scout force had somehow found Korthax Prime. 3 bioships, each the size of a small city, were descending toward the planet's surface. Evacuate all training teams immediately, Vorthik ordered. Get everyone to the emergency shelters. Sir, the human team isn't responding to communications, Kells reported. They're too far from any pickup point. Vorthik felt a surge of guilt. These humans had come to help, and now they would die because of his test. The Void Swarm would tear them apart like paper. But as he watched the battle unfold, Vorthik began to understand what Cathara had tried to tell him about humans. The human team didn't run when they saw the bioships landing. They didn't hide or wait for rescue. Rodriguez gathered his people, and they moved toward the enemy landing sites. What are they doing? Kells demanded. They can't fight those things. The humans had found a Confederation supply depot and were loading themselves with every weapon they could carry. Heavy plasma rifles, explosives, even maintenance tools that could be used as weapons. Then they split into small groups and began hunting Void Swarm drones. The drones were killing machines, part insect, part machine, with armor that could stop most weapons. But the humans fought them in ways Vorthik had never seen. They used the planet's own dangers against the enemy, leading drones into poisonous gas clouds and predator nests. They set traps using the local wildlife as bait. Most incredible of all, they seemed to feel no fear. While Confederation Marines were trained to retreat when outnumbered, the humans just kept fighting. When they ran out of ammunition, they used knives. When the knives broke, they used rocks and sticks and their own hands. Sergeant Price, a small human woman, was cornered by 3 drones. Instead of surrendering, she pulled out an explosive device and smiled at them. Come on then, she said. Let's see how tough you really are. The explosion took out all 3 drones and somehow left her mostly unharmed dot by the time Confederation reinforcements arrived. The human team had killed nearly 100 Void Swarm drones and driven the rest back to their ships. The bioships retreated rather than face more losses. Rodriguez found Vorthik in the command center, covered in blood and dirt but still standing. His uniform was torn and he was missing most of his equipment, but he was grinning. Mission complete, sir, he reported. Training course finished in 3 days as promised. Also took care of your bug problem. Vorthik stared at this human warrior who had just accomplished something that should have been impossible. How? He asked. Rodriguez shrugged. We're used to things trying to kill us. These bugs are just bigger than what we're used to back home. That night, as medical teams treated the human wounded, Vorthik sent his report to the High Council. It was short and simple. The humans are ready. Give them everything they ask for. Give them ships, weapons, and support. Then point them at the enemy and get out of their way. We are no longer alone in this war. Admiral Cathara stood in the war room of Confederation Command, watching red markers disappear from the galactic map. Each one represented a victory against the Void Swarm. And there were more victories now than anyone had dared hope for 6 months ago. The difference was the humans. Report from the Vega sector, announced Commander Veltar, now promoted to Intelligence Chief. Colonel Morrison's strike team destroyed 3 hive nodes in the last week. The swarm is pulling back from the entire region. How many human casualties? Cathara asked. 7 wounded, none killed. Cathara shook her head in amazement. When they had first offered the humans advanced Confederation technology, she expected them to need months of training. Instead, They had taken their new weapons and armor and immediately started modifying them. Dr. Sarah Kim, now leading Human Research Division, had combined alien energy shields with human ceramic armor to create protection that could stop anything the swarm had. Engineer Captain Rodriguez had rebuilt Confederation plasma rifles to fire faster and hit harder. Most disturbing of all, psychologist Dr. James Park had created new tactics that used the swarm's hive mind against itself. "Ma'am," Valtar said carefully, "there's been another incident. Show me." The holographic display changed to show video from the battle at Kepler Station. Cathara watched as human Marines led by Major Lisa Park cleared swarm drones from the station corridors. But they weren't just killing the drones. They were studying them, taking them apart to understand how they worked. "They're learning from the enemy," Valtar said. "Every fight makes them smarter. Some of our allies are becoming concerned." Cathara understood their worry. At first, humans had seemed like simple warriors, tough and brave, but limited. Now it was clear they were something much more dangerous. They adapted faster than any species on record. They studied their enemies and found weaknesses that others missed. Most frightening of all, they seemed to enjoy the challenge. "Patch me through to General Park," Cathara ordered. The screen shifted to show the human general aboard her command ship. Lisa Park was younger than most Confederation commanders, with short brown hair and cold green eyes. She had been promoted rapidly after developing tactics that consistently defeated swarm forces with minimal losses. "Admiral," Park said, "good to see you. We just finished clearing the Tau Ceti system. The bugs are running scared. General, I need to ask you about your methods. Some of our allies are worried about your approach to warfare." Park's expression didn't change. "Which approach would that be?" "The psychological warfare. The way you're using the hive mind against itself." "Oh, that." Park smiled, and Cathara was reminded of why other species found human expressions unsettling. "It's pretty simple, really. Hive minds share information instantly, right? So if you can traumatize one part of the network badly enough, the trauma spreads to the whole system. And how do you traumatize a hive mind? You make them watch their own forces die in ways that don't make sense to them. You show them that their perfect system has flaws. You introduce chaos into their order." Park's smile grew wider. "Humans are very good at chaos." Cathara felt a chill run through her. "General, are you saying you're deliberately causing psychological damage to an entire species?" "I'm saying I'm winning a war," Park replied. "The swarm has killed billions of people. They've destroyed entire civilizations. If I can break their will to fight by making them afraid, then yes, I'll do that. Wouldn't you?" Before Cathara could answer, alarms started blaring throughout the command center. A new report was coming in from the front lines. "Ma'am," Valtar said, his voice shaking. "It's the humans at Beta Centauri. They've done something unprecedented." The display showed a massive void swarm hive ship, one of the largest ever seen. It was retreating from a human fleet that was less than half its size. But the retreat wasn't organized. The bioship was moving in erratic patterns, almost like it was drunk. What happened? Cathara demanded. Captain James Webb of the human destroyer Defiance appeared on screen. "We found their weakness, Admiral. The hive mind has a central processing node. If you can overload it with contradictory information, the whole system starts to break down." "How did you overload it?" "We fed it human tactical databases," Webb said proudly. "Turns out their perfect logical minds can't process human military thinking. We're too chaotic, too unpredictable. When they tried to analyze our combat patterns, it crashed their whole network." "You weaponize your own unpredictability?" Cathara asked. "Ma'am, we weaponized everything we could think of. Human music, human art, human poetry, human humor. We broadcast it all directly into their communication system. They couldn't handle it. Cathara stared at the screen in shock. The humans hadn't just defeated the swarm, they had broken it psychologically by being too human for it to understand. Later that day, she received a priority message from the Zilani High Council. Several Confederation member species were requesting an emergency session to discuss the human problem. "They're becoming too powerful," complained Ambassador Dexani of the Rigelian Republic. "They're not just fighting the swarm, they're learning from them, evolving. What happens after the war is over? They're changing the nature of warfare itself," added General Korthik of the Andorian Defense Force. "Their tactics are spreading to other species. Our own soldiers are becoming more aggressive." Cathara listened to their concerns and understood their fear. The humans had arrived as potential allies in a desperate war. Now they were reshaping the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to fight. Human advisors were training Confederation forces in tactics that would have been considered barbaric 6 months ago. Human engineers were building weapons that pushed the boundaries of acceptable military technology. Most disturbing of all, human colonies were spreading throughout Confederation space. Every world they touched became more like Earth, harder, tougher, more willing to fight back against threats. "What do you propose we do?" Cathara asked the assembly. "Limit their expansion," Dexani said. "Restrict their military technology. Return them to their home system after the war." "And who's going to enforce these restrictions?" asked a new voice from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned to see General Vorthik, the old Krillian warrior who had first tested the humans on Korthax Prime. He stood slowly, his battle scars visible under the chamber lights. "Who here thinks they can tell the humans what they can and cannot do?" He continued. "Who believes they can force a species that fights hive-mind aliens for sport to go home and stay quiet?" The chamber fell silent. "I fought beside them," Vorthik said. "I've watched them turn certain death into victory. They didn't just save our civilizations. They showed us what we could become if we stopped being afraid." They looked around the chamber with eyes that had seen too many wars. "The humans aren't our problem. They're our evolution. And there's no going back." Outside the chamber windows, human ships could be seen patrolling the space lanes, protecting Confederation worlds from threats that once would have destroyed them. The galaxy was changing, and the humans were just getting started. The greatest fleet in galactic history hung in space near the edge of the galaxy. 2,000 ships from 47 different worlds, all united under one goal: to destroy the Void, Swarm's primary hive, before it could launch its final assault on the civilized galaxy. Admiral Cathara stood on the bridge of the flagship Unity, watching the tactical display. The enemy force was enormous. Hundreds of bioships surrounding a central hive, structured the size of a small moon. Intelligence reports said over 1 trillion individual swarm drones were waiting inside that hive. "Final fleet positions," reported her tactical officer. "All Confederation forces are ready. The humans are requesting permission to begin their approach." Cathara looked at the smaller display showing the human contingent. Only 50 ships compared to the Confederation's 2,000, but she had learned not to judge human forces by their numbers. Admiral Sarah Chun commanded them from the experimental destroyer Prometheus, a ship that combined the best human and alien technology into something entirely new. "Open a channel to Admiral Chun," Cathara ordered. Chun's image appeared on the main screen. Behind her, the bridge of the Prometheus hummed with activity as humans prepared for the largest battle in galactic history. "Ready to end this, Cathara?" Chun asked. "Are you certain your plan will work?" Chen's expression was calm and confident. "We've been fighting monsters our whole lives. This is just the biggest one yet." The plan was typically human, insane, dangerous, and just crazy enough that it might actually work. Instead of a direct assault on the hive, The humans would broadcast a psychological virus directly into the swarm's communication network. But this wasn't like their previous attacks. This was designed to do something that had never been attempted before: turn the hive mind against itself. "All ships, begin the assault," Cathara ordered. The Confederation fleet moved forward in perfect formation, their weapons firing coordinated volleys at the swarm's outer defenses. The enemy responded exactly as predicted, sending thousands of bioships to engage the attackers. But while the main battle raged, the human ships moved along a different path. They used stealth technology and careful timing to slip past the swarm's defenses, heading directly for the central hive. Dr. James Park, now aboard the Prometheus, monitored the psychological warfare systems. "Beginning transmission," he reported, broadcasting on all swarm communication frequencies. What the humans sent into the hive mind wasn't just chaos. It was something far more dangerous. It was the sum total of human experience, compressed into a form that the swarm's logical minds couldn't reject or ignore. They broadcast humanity's greatest fears and greatest triumphs. The terror of standing alone against impossible odds, and the joy of victory against all hope. The pain of losing everything and the determination to keep fighting anyway. They transmitted the story of every human who had ever looked at a hostile universe and decided to fight back rather than surrender. The effect on the swarm was immediate and devastating. The hive mind, which had operated as one perfect consciousness for millions of years, suddenly experienced something it had never felt before: doubt. The human psychological virus didn't just confuse the swarm. It infected them with humanity's most dangerous trait: the ability to question authority, to think independently, to choose their own path. Throughout the hive structure, individual drones began to hesitate. Some stopped following orders. Others turned on their neighbors. Within minutes, the perfect unity of the swarm was fracturing into millions of individual minds, each suddenly aware of its own existence and terrified of what it had become. "It's working," Park reported. "The hive mind is fragmenting. They're fighting each other." On the tactical display, Cathara watched in amazement as the swarm fleet began to tear itself apart. Bioships that had moved in perfect coordination for eons were now attacking each other with savage fury. The central hive was convulsing as internal explosions rocked its structure. "All ships, press the attack," Chan ordered over the communication system. "Don't let them regroup." The human fleet moved with deadly precision, targeting the weakest points in the swarm's formation. But they weren't just destroying ships. They were amplifying the psychological chaos, broadcasting more human experiences to every swarm unit they encountered. The battle lasted for hours, but the outcome was never in doubt once the hive mind began to collapse. By the end, the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known was reduced to scattered fragments. Individual creatures fleeing in all directions without purpose or unity. In the aftermath, as rescue ships collected survivors and counted the cost of victory, Cathara found herself alone with Chun in the observation lounge of the Unity. "How did you know it would work?" she asked. Chun stared out at the debris field that had once been the swarm's invincible fleet. "Because we understood something about consciousness that the swarm never learned. Unity without choice isn't strength, it's weakness. Real strength comes from individuals choosing to work together despite their differences. And now? Now the galaxy learns to live with humans," Chun said simply. "We're not going anywhere. Our colonies are already spreading to a dozen systems. Our children are being born on worlds that would have killed their grandparents. We're not just surviving anymore, we're growing." Cathara nodded slowly. In the months since first contact, everything had changed. Human advisors were training alien military forces in new tactics. Human engineers were designing ships and weapons that pushed the boundaries of known science. Human teachers were working in schools across the Confederation, showing young aliens how to think creatively and solve problems. Most importantly, human families were settling on worlds throughout the galaxy, bringing their unique perspective to cultures that had been stagnant for centuries. Some of my people are still afraid, Cathara admitted. They should be, Chun said, but her tone was gentle. We're the species that looked at a galaxy full of peaceful civilizations and taught them how to fight. We turned your defensive war into a victory by making your enemies afraid of their own minds. We're going to change everything we touch. She turned to face Cathara directly. But here's what your people need to understand. We're not conquerors. We're gardeners. We take things that are dying and help them grow. The galaxy was dying before we arrived. Now it has a chance to become something stronger. Through the observation window, they could see human ships moving among the wreckage, not just destroying what was left of the swarm, but studying it, learning from it, preparing to use that knowledge to defend against future threats. On the communications display, reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Human-led colonies were thriving on worlds that had been considered marginal. Human-trained defense forces were successfully defending against pirate raids that would have devastated them before. Human innovations were solving problems that had puzzled alien scientists for generations. Your final report? Chan asked. Cathara smiled, thinking about the message she would send to the Galactic Confederation's High Council. We asked for allies who could help us fight monsters. We found the children of a world that creates monsters and trains them to protect others. The war is over, but the real change is just beginning. In the distance, a human transport ship was heading toward a new colony world, carrying families who would raise their children under alien stars. Those children would grow up thinking it was normal to have friends with 4 arms or scales or tentacles. They would learn alien languages as easily as their own. Most importantly, they would inherit their parents' gift for turning challenges into opportunities. The galaxy would never be the same. And perhaps that was exactly what it needed. As the fleet began its journey home, carrying news of victory to 1,000 worlds. One truth was clear. Humanity had found its place among the stars, and the universe was about to discover what that really meant.